Hello, history nerds and historians. My name is Krystina, and this is Effed Up Mythology. This is where we talk about a little tidbit from mythology that is super fucked up. Today is part 3 of my Troy series. If you didn't listen to that last episode, do that. I am not going to really recap. We talked about a bunch of stuff and a bunch of people. And we talked about Peleus and Thetis, Achilles, Eris, Paris, the judgment of Paris, Helen of Sparta / Troy / Sparta, obligatory Theseus rant, Iphigenia, Odysseus, Diomedes, Nestor, Ajax the Great, Ajax the Lesser, Agamemnon, Menelaus. I mean, we just had a grand old time in the last couple episodes. So just go back and listen to those if you hadn't, because it is a lot to recap, but it's pretty much everything that led us to where we are right now. So today, and in the next couple episodes, we will be talking about the Trojan War as found in the Iliad. So I'm going to go through the whole thing with you and talk about like all the nuances of the Iliad, but in the classic Krystina Effed Up History / Mythology fashion, we will be doing it with lots of sarcasm. These are not spark notes, these are snark notes. I am trademarking that if it isn't already, although I'm sure it is, because it is witty as hell and there are no original ideas ever in the world, ever. I do have to say, this is probably the hardest episode or like series of episodes that I've done because the source material is so long. Like, I love Homer. I love the story of the Iliad, especially the beginning and the end of it. I think it starts really interestingly. It really like immerses you right into the action. And I think that the ending is really beautiful, really moving. I cry hysterical tears like every time. But the middle, man, he could have used an editor. It is sometimes boring as hell. I got to page 246 of 653 and took a 3-day break because I just couldn't read it anymore. I was literally just like sitting in front of my laptop staring at the ebook that I downloaded. I suffered a little bit for this episode, and I really hope you like it because it is my attempt at making it entertaining. Trigger warning before we begin: death. A lot of fucking death and women as property and the rants that will probably go along with that misogyny. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and practice your oh good god, what the fuck faces. Achilles is pissed at Agamemnon. The Iliad begins on the brink of the 10th year into the Trojan War, just like Calchas predicted. Again, why they couldn't just wait 9 years before taking off makes too much sense to actually do it. So the Greeks, and I say the Greeks, so side note, Krystina has just begun and we're already going off on a tangent, but side note, I'm gonna call them the Greeks because that's just easier. In the Iliad, they call them a lot of different names, typically calling them by the name of the country that is associated with the group that they're talking about, or they'll have like a few different names for them in general, but then there's also like the Myrmidons, I think is how it's pronounced, which is specifically Achilles' men, and then, you know, so there's a lot of groups from Greece that are making up the Greek army. So to go and specifically call each one by each name is just really, really confusing. So I'm just going to call them the Greeks. And it's similar with the Trojans as well. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to call them the Trojans, even though a lot of what makes up the Trojan army are not even people from Troy. It's like their allies that come to help them. But it's just way confusing if you try to go by like the 17 different names that they call the armies at any given time. So the Greeks have plundered 23 cities surrounding Troy. And in that, they have taken many spoils of war, including 130 women that were divided amongst the captains as slaves, because remember, women are property. So the most notable of these women are Chryseis, who was given to Agamemnon, and Briseis, who was given to Achilles. We love those rhyming names here. They make it not confusing to listen to at all. So as Iliad begins, there is a plague that has fallen on the Greek camp, and people are dying left and right because Agamemnon has honored the priest of Apollo named Chryses, who made his way into the Greek camp to beg and pay for his daughter Chryseis' freedom. So Chryses is like, yo, I hope the gods give you all the luck when it comes to taking over the city of Troy. I honestly don't give a fuck about it. I hope you kill all of Priam's men and then have a trip back home that is just like so safe and so quick and uneventful that it is even worth talking about. But please, may I have my daughter back? And he doesn't just say this like, hey, I would like my daughter back. He's like, here, I will give you a lot of things in exchange for my daughter. I just want my daughter back. And Agamemnon tells him no. Agamemnon tells him no and to fuck off. And if he sees him again, then not even Apollo will be able to spare the priest. He's going to keep his daughter. When the war is done, she's going back to Argos with him, and she will be my slave in the working and sexual sense. I think at one point he even says that like he loves her more than his own wife, which is fun. So the priest of Apollo, who had not been trained as a warrior, leaves like he's told. And when he gets far enough away from the camp that he feels safe, he stops and he asks Apollo, if you recognize me as your priest and I've honored you well, I have built you the best temple, if I have given you the best offerings, if I have lived my life to your liking, then fucking decimate these Greek sons of bitches and let them suffer while you do it. And apparently Chryses is the best fucking priest because pretty much immediately Apollo answers. He descends from Mount Olympus with fury. He comes upon the Greek camp like the knight incarnate, and he starts fucking shit up and killing everything in sight. First, he kills all the dogs and mules, which is not cool because I mean, what did the dogs do? Like, why did the dogs always have to die? They didn't ask to be there. They didn't ask to be Greek. And then once he's done killing the dogs and the mules, he starts on the men, and soon the plague erupts in the Greek camp, and people are dying so quickly and in such mass numbers that the funeral pyres seem to be never ending. And this lasts for 9 days until Hera cannot take it anymore. The Trojan War sort of like split the Olympians down the middle when it came to like who they were supporting. So some of them were supporting the Greeks and then others were supporting the Trojans, and Hera was on the Greek side. So seeing the Greeks die in droves made her incredibly distraught, understandably. So on the 10th morning, she whispered in Achilles' ear and planted an idea in his head. So he gathered all the healthy men that he could and approached Agamemnon and was like, dude, this plague is making it so that we won't even get in to Troy at this rate. We're going to be forced to go back to Greece if we can even go home at all. So let's go to an oracle or seer and see if they can tell us what god we made angry and how we can fix that, even though we as the reader / listener are already fucking know. And this is called dramatic irony. So the second that Achilles sits down, Calchas, who we've talked about before, he was the one who interpreted the omen from Artemis about Iphigenia needing to be sacrificed. He was the one that interpreted that it would take 10 years to get into Troy. He was also the one who said that Achilles was at Skyros. So, you know, Calchas, one of the greatest seers among the Greeks, and he stands up and is like, Achilles, you asked me to look into this, but you have to promise me that you'll defend me and that no one, Agamemnon, will kill the messenger, or rather the messenger of the gods in this case. And Achilles agrees, and Calchas tells us what we already know, that Agamemnon has pissed off Apollo. He needs to give back Chryseis and sacrifice 100 oxen and goats. And Agamemnon stands up and he's pissed. He's like, Calchas, why are you never fucking on my side? And of fucking course you would say that I have to give her back. And that really upsets me because I love her more than my wife Clytemnestra. See, there it is. Chryseis is prettier and she's smarter and she has a better body and she's better with her body. So I have to give her back. If I have to do that, I want another woman. And Achilles is like, do you think we just have like a stockpile of women lying around? Okay, yeah, if you give her back when we attack Troy, you will get you 4 women to replace her. And Agamemnon is like, no, I want one now. Maybe I'll just take yours, Achilles. What was her name again? Briseis? And Achilles is like, fuck that shit. If you take Briseis, if you take my prize, I'm just going to go the fuck home. This is bullshit. I came here for you and your brother. I have nothing against the Trojans. They've literally never done anything to me. And I am not going to fucking fight for you anymore with you threatening to take my prize, which we have to remember is, of course, a woman that was given to me. Good luck winning this fucking war without me, because wait, what was that? What was it that the oracle said before we left? Oh yeah, you can't win without me. Bye, bitch. Die, bitch. And Achilles considers just like drawing his sword and killing Agamemnon there, but Athena comes down and grabs him by his hair, kinky, and she tells him to back off and that Agamemnon will pay. So Achilles is like, this is good enough for me. I think I will just stay here and watch you crash and burn. And there will be a day when you will beg me to be on your side again. And I'll just laugh and laugh and laugh. It'll be great. Well, it'll be great for me. Probably won't be great for you, but it'll be very good for me. I remember Achilles already doesn't like Agamemnon with the whole like using him to murder his daughter thing 9 years beforehand before they even left. So this is just like a continuation of a feud between the two men who just need to measure their dicks and get over it. So all of the people, all of the Greeks try to convince them to both change their minds, but it's pointless. I mean, we talked about the concept of hubris in the Oedipus episode, and again, like that's just what we're talking about and seeing here again, and this will not turn out very well for them. Eventually, we still have like 620 pages to go. So Agamemnon does a sacrifice, he gives back Chryseis, and Apollo ends the plague, and then Agamemnon orders his soldiers to go and take Chryseis from Achilles, and if he doesn't give her to them willingly, then he will fucking regret it. At least that's what he says. And the men that Agamemnon sends are like, awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much for this honor of telling this to Achilles and being on the receiving end of his wrath while you, my dear king, just fucking chill in your tent. So they go to Achilles and he's like, hey fam, y'all are good. I don't have any problems with you. I know that you're just doing what you're told. But when you bring him my prize of war, I also give him this message. That I swear by the gods and men that I will not set foot on that fucking battlefield again for his sake. I'ma just chill here with my lover, friend, Patroclus. So Achilles is distraught after Briseis is taken from him. So he summons his mother and he fills her in on everything that happened. And then he asks her to go to Zeus and remind him of all the times that she helped him. Like that time when she saved his son, and that time that she saved his other son, and that time when Athena and Hera revolted against him and she set him free. You remember all the things that like they should have been grateful for before, but they just let her get raped. Now these things are important to the plot line of the story. So he asks his mother to go back, go to Zeus, remind him of all of these things. And then when she has Zeus firmly in her grasp, to beg him to help the Trojans, to make sure that as many Greeks as possible die, and that Agamemnon and his army truly suffer. Let the men know how great Agamemnon is, and let Agamemnon come and regret dishonoring me. And he's like weeping as he's asking her to do this. So she takes pity on him. She feels really bad. She's like, my poor baby, my poor son who is doomed to live such a short life. You're not coming home from Troy. We all know that. And now the rest of your days will be in sorrow. I will do anything you ask me to spare you an ounce of suffering. So she did this, and she told Zeus that if he respected her at all, that he would do this. And if he doesn't, it just shows how little he regards her. And Zeus sat for a long time in silence before he was finally like, you're asking me a big fucking favor, and you're gonna put me on the shit list with my wife because she's on the Greek side, and we literally just got in a fight this morning where she was saying I'm always on the Trojan side, and I told her that I wasn't, and now I have no choice because you put me in a real tough place. You're lucky I still think you're hot. I remember that you freed me from my family when they tried to usurp my reign, so now you have to go before Hera notices, and I swear that I will see this done for you. But Hera notices and immediately calls him out, and she guesses exactly what happened and exactly what Thetis asked him. And Zeus just gaslights her and is like, what? You You are crazy. Like, you accuse me of these things that are so not true. And like, I'm like, the only other thing that it does is make me resent you. So like, shut up or whatever. And it just so happens that is what happened. I do what I want. Okay. So later that night, he's trying to figure out the best way to approach a situation, and he decides that he would speak to Agamemnon in a dream that all the gods have decided that the Greeks will win with or without Achilles, and they have to immediately arm all of the men and attack Troy, and they will be victorious. So Agamemnon wakes up the next morning, he communicates this dream to all his men, and they prepare for battle. They sacrifice some cattle, they have a quick brekkie. There's also a lot of like back and forth politics that go on for far too long that I do not care to discuss. So the men enter the battlefield, and Athena fills their hearts with strength and desire for war and push away any thoughts of home. And then Homer goes on to name every single commander and where they're from and what their strengths are for 16 fucking pages. Again, I don't care to recite that, but if you want to read it, Stephen Mitchell's translation is really good. Long story short, there were a lot of really cool dudes who did really cool things and were really strong warriors, but true to his promise, not on the battlefield was Achilles. He was at his camp with his men. They were playing games, lounging around, doing whatever. So Zeus sent Iris, goddess of the rainbow, to warn the Trojans of the impending attack. So Hector, who was Priam's son, was a warrior. He was renowned just like Achilles. He was the best of the Trojans, and he gathered his troops who were eager for battle. Paris, his brother, who arguably started this whole thing, was at his side. One of the other commanders that is pretty important is a man named Aeneas, who was the son of Aphrodite and Anchises. There's also a whole list of Trojan commanders that goes on for 6 pages, which I will, again, not go over. These people are not important. Anyone who's important to the story, I will mention. These 6 and like 16 pages are just lists and lists and lists of people that are like never mentioned or are mentioned once when they're like killed by Ajax or something. So Paris steps on the field, and he's in a leopard skin, and he's got his bow and arrow, and he's got a sword, and he asks for the best and the bravest of the Greeks to step forward, and Menelaus is like, bitch, this is why I fucking came here. So he steps forward, and Paris is shitting himself because Menelaus is king of Sparta, where they value combat over everything, and he's scary as fuck, and he's fucking huge, and Paris recoils. He was terrified, and he shrinks back into the crowd, and Hector is like, dude, you started this fucking war and strut out onto the battlefield talking big game. Now that someone's taking you up in your challenge, you're going to run away. You are a fucking disgrace, and you are a selfish fool who only thinks with his dick. And I wish that you never saw Helen and got married to her. Or better yet, that you were just never born. You're fucking embarrassing me and the entirety of the Trojan army and our father and the city of Troy itself. The Greeks are probably laughing their asses off and mocking us. You are a coward. Do you only save your bravery for stealing men's wives in the middle of the night while they're out of town? And Paris is like, you are not wrong. But have you seen this guy? Okay, well, it was really nice knowing you, brother. So the two sides negotiate. Hector says that they don't want to shed innocent blood. And this is just between Paris and Menelaus. None of the other soldiers are going to get involved. This is going to be a fight to the death between the two of them, and the prize is Helen. Whoever the gods deem is the victor and rightful husband will win the duel and receive her and all of her possessions, and everyone can go home and we'll all just be friends, and this doesn't have to devolve into war. It was a good plan, guys. It was a really good plan. But this is about the Trojan War. So Menelaus steps forward and is like, I feel the same way. There has been enough bloodshed already in the towns surrounding the city of Troy. We've been gone from our homelands for over 10 years, and this is just between me and Paris. I appreciate that everyone has come out and that all the Greeks have my back, but this isn't what I wanted. So let's make an oath that this is what we'll do. We'll sacrifice a couple lambs to Zeus, and we'll do this. But if we break this oath, war will ensue. And I wonder what happens. And the Trojans and Greeks are both really happy for this compromise. And while they're preparing the sacrifice and all that, the goddess Iris went to Helen and she disguised herself as Paris' sister. And Iris finds Helen rather distraught. She feels really guilty that this war has begun because of her. Arguably because of her. Arguably you could say it was because of Theseus, but we just try and blame everything on him in Effed Up History. So I was just like, look, they're not fighting. Everyone's laying down their weapons, and it's going to be just this fight. And then we'll know, and everyone can go home, and no one is going to ask what you want because you're just a woman. And why should you decide if you want to be with Paris or Menelaus, or just by yourself and tell everyone to fuck off? No, you are the prize. You are the object to be won. This fight is going to end, and then you're going to be just given to whoever. And then Iris fills Helen with longing for her former husband and her home Sparta, which I'm assuming she did because it's pretty clear that Paris is like not gonna win. Have you seen this guy? And even the elders of Troy, including Priam, Paris's father, don't want Paris to win either because they want Helen to go back to Sparta. They view her as a curse on Troy. Although really, is it her fault or is it Paris's fault? Because there was the prophecy that Paris was the curse on Troy, but we're just going to blame the woman for everything, right? So Helen goes to the wall to watch this battle, and Priam is like, it's okay. I don't blame this on you. I know that it was the gods doing. And Helen is pretty much suicidal at this point. She says that she wished that she would have just died, or that maybe if she still died, it would all end everything. And Priam basically tells her not to think about it. He asks her to tell him about the great warriors that are on the field, like Agamemnon and Odysseus and Ajax. And then he goes down to complete the sacrifice, and the duel begins. So they drew lots, and Paris was the one who was to throw the first spear. So the men put on their armor. They went to the designated duel area and sort of like the no man's land between the two armies. Paris throws his spear and hits dead center on Menelaus' shield. And Menelaus prepared for his first attack and prayed to Zeus to help him execute his revenge on the man who came to him in friendship and stole his wife and lived as her husband for the last 10 years. And then he threw his spear. Spear went right through Paris's shield, his breastplate, and his tunic, and grazed under his ribs. It probably would have killed him if Paris hadn't moved slightly to the side when Menelaus threw it. So Menelaus takes his sword and he strikes Paris's helmet, and the sword shattered in his hand. He cries out to Zeus, "Truly, there is no god that is more spiteful than you. I thought you would at least let me have my revenge finally after 10 fucking years." And then he strides forward, enraged now, not only at Paris, but at the gods. And he grabs Paris by his helmet and starts dragging him towards the Greeks. And he's strangling him by the straps of his helmet. And he would have just killed him with his bare hands if it wasn't for Aphrodite, who intervenes and she cuts the straps. Menelaus realized there wasn't a person at the end of the helmet anymore, and he rolls around with his spear, ready to attack Paris, who now has a broken shield, a ruined breastplate, and no helmet, when Aphrodite again steps in. She whisks him away to his bedroom behind the gates of Troy, and then disguised herself and went and got Helen and was like, "Paris is waiting for you in your room, and he doesn't look like he almost died at all. He's gorgeous, and you should go reward him for being so gorgeous." And Helen just saw right through the disguise and was like, "Aphrodite, what the fuck do you want now? Are you here to take me to another beautiful man that you favor when Paris is dead? If you care so much about Paris and his well-being, then you go to him. Maybe he'll make you his wife, or maybe just his whore. I don't plan on going to him. I will not disgrace myself any more than I already have." And a reminder, she's been filled with longing for her first husband. But Aphrodite looks at her with a glare that instills fear in Helen's heart and tells her that she could easily despise her just as much as she adores her. And if her heart turns to hatred for Helen, that she will rejoice in the cruel death that would await her. So Helen went, but she was not in a good mood about it. She was like, "Paris, you're back. Wish you fucking weren't, because if I remember correctly, you talked a big talk about how you were so much better than my first husband, how you were stronger and better with a spear, and yet here you are. You should go back and fight him, although that might not be the best idea because he will kill you." And Paris is so offended. He's like, "My love, please. Menelaus may have won this time, but it's because Athena was helping him clearly. But I will win the next one. But right now, this near-death experience is making me extremely horny, and I would like to do that now. And by that, I mean you, because I'm super smooth." So they get together in a marital way, while Menelaus is still in the field, just ripping his way through the Trojan soldiers, trying to find Paris. And he's screaming like a wild beast, and the Trojans are looking for him too, because they all hate him. And eventually, in an effort to calm his brother down, Agamemnon steps forward and announces, "Menelaus has won. through Paris' forfeit, and Helen must be returned to the Greeks, and they have won the war. Or have they? Because in Mount Olympus, all the gods are watching and drinking and laughing and laughing and laughing. And Zeus starts taunting Hera, saying, you and Athena may be on the side of the Greeks, but Aphrodite is literally intervening and pulling people off the battlefield. Should we honor the oath that they just made? Acknowledge Menelaus as a victor and everyone goes home in friendship? Or should we incite the war? And Athena couldn't take it anymore. She screamed at her father, what do you mean? Why would we incite war and make everything that I've done and everything that Hera has done be in vain? I know that you do what you want, but why would you be so cruel to me, your daughter? And Zeus asks her, like, what has Priam and Troy done to you to make you hate them so much and want to destroy Troy just for the hell of it? Like, we know that you and Hera hate Paris because he didn't pick you as a fairest, but why take it out on all of Troy? Even if you were to take down Troy, would that really make you feel better? Fine. You know what? I will give in. But the next time I have an urge to take down a city that is full of people you hold dear, you can't say or do shit. And Hera steps forward and is like, yeah, go for it. My favorite cities are Argos and Sparta and Mycenae. You can destroy them right now and I will not stop you. I couldn't stop you anyway because you're the strongest of us and that's why you need to help us. So please let Athena go into the battlefield and incite rage among the Trojans, make them break the truce, and give the Greeks cause to fight. And Zeus complies. And he allows Athena to go down. She flashes to earth like a falling star. Now this is just a lot of battle and politics amongst the gods for the next, 250 pages or so. So I'm going to summarize this as quick as possible and as least painful as possible because it's important to the story, things that happen now, but it's a lot of names and description of people that are mentioned here for the first time and for the last time. And I've never seen their names in mythology outside of this. And it's a lot. So warning, bear with me. I'm going to try and make this as fun as possible. So Athena falls into the Trojans and disguises herself as the captain named Antenor. And she goes up to a man named Pandarus. And she asks him if he thought that he could take Menelaus down with a single shot. He is really well known for his skill with the bow and arrow. And she's like, imagine the fame and the notoriety. I'm sure Paris will be so grateful to shower you with gifts. Do it. Do it. Don't worry about the truce. Just sacrifice 100 lambs to Apollo when you return home after the war. Do it. And he's like, cool. Yep, I will. That sounds great. And he pulls out his bow and the Trojans around him shield him so that no one could see what was happening. He knocks his arrow and vowed that he would sacrifice to Apollo and then loosed it. It flies across the field straight for Menelaus and it was about to find its mark when Athena steps up and brushes the arrow away like you would brush away a fly. She's literally just playing war with herself at this moment. It did hit him, but it wasn't a fatal blow, but it did break the truce. So spears clash against shields, armor rings out mixing with the cries and groans of men killing and being killed, and the earth flows with blood. Lots of men were killed in battle and it was fierce. Neither side gave way until Lucy's, who was dear to Odysseus, was killed, and Odysseus, enraged and heartbroken, strode through the ranks and just stood in front of the Trojans and stared them down, and he was so wild and terrifying that the Trojans began pulling back. And then they really started panicking when Athena infused Diomedes from Argos with her strength and bravery that literally caused him to glow with a bright light like the fucking fire. But that's probably not the only reason they were panicking a little bit. Remember when we talked about the 7 against Thebes in the Antigone episode, and I mentioned that there was one warrior who was super badass, and he was the fiercest warrior of the 7, who was favored by Athena, who Athena wanted to make immortal, until she looked on the battlefield and saw that he was channeling his inner George Romero and eating brains of one of the men he killed. Yeah, this is his son. And he looks like he's fucking on fire, the flaming son of a cannibal zombie dude. And the Trojans are brave enough to fight him, but none succeed. Pandarus, the same one who hit Menelaus with the arrow, hits Diomedes and thought that it did something, but it fucking didn't. I mean, it harmed his shoulder a little bit, but that just sort of pissed him off and got his adrenaline running even more than anything else. So Diomedes was like, Athena, if you've ever loved me or loved my father, grant me the power and serenity to kill the shit out of this fuckhead who thinks that he can step up to me. And Athena's like, baby doll, I will do one better. You are still glowing and looking like you're on fire. And now I'm also going to give you all the strength of your crazy ass father. And also, I'm going to remove the mist from your eyes so that you can discern who's a god and who's a mortal. So that way you know. And if any god approaches you and challenges you to a fight, then you refuse, because you might become too strong and they might try and take you down. Except if it is that fucking goddamn bitch Aphrodite, if she comes, you fuck her shit right up. And Diomedes is like, thank you. And then he kills Astinus and Abas and Polyidus and Xanthus and Thune. And like, you know who these people are. I don't know who these people are, and I'm obsessed with mythology. He kills a lot of fucking people. And the Iliad goes on to name every single one of them because Homer has never heard of a fucking editor. So after this very long list of murdered people is done, Aeneas, who I mentioned briefly is son of Aphrodite, finds Pandarus and was like, if you're so good with your fucking bow and arrow, then let's use it. And Pandarus is like, Aeneas, counselor, friend, I'm fucking trying. Like, he's glowing like an anthropomorphic flame. People don't just do that. He clearly has a god on his side that isn't letting me. I mean, I did hit his shoulder, but that clearly is not holding him back. And I was like, what chariot shall I use when he's destroyed fucking all of them? And I left my spare at home. I can fire 1,000,000 arrows and they're clearly not going to do anything because I've hit 2 of their best warriors, drawn blood, and they're still standing. So this bow, it's fucking useless. And Aeneas is like, just think positive, friend. Relax. Take a couple deep breaths. Maybe let's do like some meditation here for a moment. Breathe in and out. You can't see it, but my eye is twitching. So after he tells Pandarus to just like smile to get rid of his depression, Aeneas is like, I actually have a horse and chariot, conveniently plot device. So let's get on that and do this shit. Now, the horses that Aeneas says are not just any horses. They are the best horses, descended from the horses of King Tros, given to him by Zeus in exchange for his son who became sex slave and cupbearer. Effed Up Mythology. So these horses ride like the wind, and Pandarus is like, it is me, the man who fired the arrow at you, Diomedes, like 15 minutes ago, and here I am to try and kill you again. And he hurls a spear at Diomedes, who just catches it in his shield. And Pandarus thinks that he hit him, and it's like, fuck yeah, got you in your fucking stomach. There's no saving you now. And Diomedes just like moves the shield to the side a little bit and is like, yeah, no, I'm cool, dude, but you're not about to be. Trigger warning, graphic ass shit coming up right now. So Diomedes throws his spear and he hits Pandarus on the nose near his eye, and it thrusts down and drove through his teeth and sliced off his tongue and came out of the bottom of his face, which is terrifying and quite jarring for me to read, considering that the last 100 pages leading up to this was basically semi-boring exposition, and he obviously died in a very horrific way that I think I literally had a nightmare about the other day. Aeneas jumps out of the chariot. He tries to grab Pandarus's body when Diomedes picks up a boulder that 3 men couldn't pick up by themselves. He holds it above his head and he throws it at Aeneas, which broke his pelvis and tore all of the tendons in his legs, which again is fucking terrifying. And Aeneas falls to the ground. Death is coming for him in the form of Diomedes when Aphrodite quickly descends onto the field and throws herself over her son and whisks him away because she is a lover and not a fighter. But remember, Athena has allowed Diomedes to see the gods and told him that if he sees Aphrodite, he needs to try and kill her even though she's immortal. So he's going after her hard, and he manages to catch up with her and stabs her. And it ends up like just stabbing her right above the wrist, but it makes her drop Aeneas, and he shouts at her basically, haven't you done enough? Why don't you just fuck right the fuck off, or I'll show you how terrifying war can actually be, goddess of fucking love. So she leaves and goes back to Mount Olympus, and Apollo helps her a little by hiding Aeneas in a shadow on the field. But Diomedes is still going after him. He can see right through the shadow that Apollo has put into place, and so he tries and tries and tries to kill him. And every time Apollo is like, no, go away, Diomedes, like squirting him with a spray bottle and telling him he's a bad boy. And finally, on the fourth attempt, Apollo tells him to back the fuck up. And even though Athena is helping him, he needs to stop acting like he is a god. And then he just like removes Aeneas from the field entirely and brings him to his mother Leda and sister Artemis, who heals him. Diomedes is livid. So he goes and steals Aeneas' super cool horses. So at least he gets that out of the deal. The battle continues. Menelaus kills people. Aeneas kills people. Agamemnon kills people. Hector kills people. Everyone was kung fu fighting, okay, except for Achilles. He's twiddling his thumbs back at camp. So, you know, there are lots of like murders and all of that happening. And Hector finally decides that now is the time. And he starts running towards the Greeks. And Ares is at his side. Diomedes can still see the god. And he starts telling everyone to back the fuck up. So Athena approaches Diomedes, who is taking a rest at this point after he retreats a little bit because of the wound that he got from Pandarus. It's like actually starting to be really taxing, and his armor is like rubbing against it every time he lifts his shield, and he feels it. And Athena comes over and kind of like emasculates him because she's a big supporter of toxic masculinity, and basically tells him that he's being a big coward and his father never would have let a little wound like this affect him, and maybe he isn't worthy of his father. And Diomedes is like, lady, I'm fucking doing what you told me to do. I'm not being a coward or letting my injury get to me. You told me not to attack any god other than Aphrodite, and Ares is getting in the way. And Athena is like, oh, don't worry, I will take care of Ares. And she jumps in his chariot with him. She takes the reins and heads straight for Ares. She was somehow able to get possession of Hades' helmet that makes the wearer invisible even to the gods. So now she's invisible, and she guides Diomedes' spear straight into Ares' stomach, and his roar, which is as loud as 10,000 men, stopped the Trojans and Greeks in their track. He leaves the field and is healed on Mount Olympus and does not come back to the battlefield. And Hector leaves the battlefield as well to go find his bullshit brother Paris, who we haven't seen since he was whisked off the field. So he finds him sulking in his room, and Hector was like, hey, sorry to bother you. In case you didn't notice, there's a war going on, and people are fucking dying, and this is literally all your fault. So get your fucking ass out there. Get down there immediately, or I'll fucking kill you myself with my giant 6-foot spear that I happen to be carrying. And Paris tells Hector that he wasn't sulking, he was grief-stricken over losing the battle, but Helen was just pestering him and convincing him to go back, so he was getting his armor ready. And after a quick kiss to the wives, they make their way back out to the field. In the meantime, Diomedes entered the sort of like no man's land between the two armies, and another man also steps forward, and Diomedes was like, who are you? I've never seen you before. Are you a god? Let me go on to talk about the mythology of Lycurgus for 2 pages for some reason, even though we literally are at war right now. And this random man responded, why do you ask? Well, if you insist, I mean, most people know who I am, but you clearly don't, so let me divulge into 6 pages about the mythology of Sisyphus and Bellerophon and King Proteus and his wife Antea and all of Bellerophon's children and their children, which I am one of. My name is Glaucus. And Diomedes throws his spear and is like, hell yeah! My grandfather and your grandfather were friends sitting by the fire. My grandma says to your grandma, we're going to set this house on fire. Talking about, yeah, sorry. And because my grandfather and your grandfather were friends, that makes us friends. Come to my home in Argos and I'll welcome you. And then you'll do the same when I come to Lycia. And the 2 men swear not to kill each other and exchange armor with each other for some fucking reason. And there is still a war going on. Like, what the hell is happening? So Paris and Hector and Glaucus are just like killing the fuck out of Greeks, so much so that Athena sweeps down to try and step in yet again, and Apollo cuts her off and is like, seriously, can you stop just fucking intervening for one day? Can we do something to end the battle today and they can take it back up tomorrow? Can we just let Troy stand for one more night, please? How about we have Hector challenge someone to single combat, and that will be the end of it. So the Trojans and the Greeks just sat there where they were in the field, and Hector asks the Greek to step forward, and after some convincing and drawing of straws, Ajax the Greater stands forward. He was excited. He was like, it is time. I'm going to kill this motherfucker Hector. And he stalks towards Hector and he's like, everyone talks about Achilles as the greatest warrior of all time. But there are Greek warriors that are just as strong and just as brave who can stand up against you. I'll even let you take the first shot, Hector. So Hector throws the first spear and misses. Ajax throws his spear and hit Hector, but just like with Paris, Hector moved at the last moment, so pretty much just grazes him, and the battle continues. Hector throws a spear. Ajax throws a spear. Hector throws a big stone. Ajax throws a big stone. It's just like a violent tennis match. And eventually some men from both sides were like, clearly, y'all are equally matched. Clearly, the gods aren't going to let each of you win, and night is descending. And there are no streetlights in ancient Troy, you know. And the two warriors agree and exchange gifts and go home. Although there was a little bit of a disagreement over what those gifts should have been, because technically Paris forfeited, which means technically they should be given Helen. And Paris stands up and is like, I don't give a shit what you're saying or what you think. I absolutely fucking refuse to give her back over my dead body, probably literally, because have you seen Menelaus? But I am willing to give back all the stuff that she brought with her and the things that I stole from Argos on my way back to Troy, and I'll even throw in some extra stuff to appease them. How many cloaks and swords is a woman worth? Any advice? Are there any ancient Trojan accountants around here? So the next morning, a messenger from Troy goes and tells Menelaus and Agamemnon what Paris has said and asks if they would be willing to stop fighting long enough to gather their dead and perform the funerary rites. And they made sure to tell them that they thought that Paris was a piece of shit, and they wholeheartedly disagreed with what he was doing, but they asked if the items that he offered would be enough to stop the war. Would be enough to stop the war. And Diomedes stood up and was like, no! And everyone agreed. And while the Trojans were gathering their dead, the Greeks began to build a wall. And that, my friends, very exciting, is where we are going to stop today. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, please consider subscribing or leaving a review or joining my Patreon. In the next couple episodes, we get a little bit more specific. Gets pretty exciting. This was just like 3/4 of the Iliad condensed into 45 minutes. So probably like about 3 weeks of my life condensed into 45 minutes. So again, if you have any history or mythology that you'd like to hear me talk about, you can reach out and let me know. I'm always looking for new ideas, but I do have like the rest of this month and all of May and part of June already planned. But after that, I'm sort of having like a few months where I get to just do stories that I want. So if there's anything you want to hear, just let me know. And remember, friends, history may be watching you, so don't fuck it up. And please, when you are writing an epic that is still going to be read in 3,000 years, hire a fucking editor. Bye.